This celebration of International Men's Day is indeed an occasion for us to reflect on the role of men, especially those whom we deem as positive role models in our society. And especially at a time when our young men are confronted by a plethora of challenges. With humility, I accept your kind invitation to examine and discuss the theme, positive male role models. I wish to probe the theme through personal reflection and to encourage you to introspect for a few minutes as we engage. Many persons, not only here in our federation, but across our region and the world, continue to advance the view that in today's world we suffer from a severe shortage of male role models. And Minister Hamilton, in his remarks, alluded to that statement. I've heard it so many times, I have read it so many times, I've actually come to believe it. But there's another side of me that is saying that we still have a sufficient number of men in our community whose influence continues to be felt in our society. In every generation, there have been men who have stood the test of public scrutiny, whose lives and roles in community have made great examples for emulation by our youth. I did say I want to look at the topic through the lens of my own personal reflection. And I look back at my own dad, who is now deceased. I remember him fondly. I know for certain that he provided much financial and material support for all of his children. As a boy growing up, my father lived abroad, just across the waters in Statia. And if you live in Sandy Point, you look across and you always see Statia. I cannot say that I was raised by my father. But if you ask me if he was a role model, I will most definitely have to say yes. One of the things about my dad that stood out or stands out was the fact that he fathered 11 children. He fathered 11 children by 3 different women. And he had the ability to bring all 11 of us together and unite us as siblings. And for me, that was a remarkable feat. The sister that I always refer to as my favorite is not my mother's daughter. She was one, or she is one of the sisters by another mother. And that, for me, stood out as a role model. Because when we listen to some of the stories that we hear today, we know that doesn't happen. And so I have always questioned what defines the positive male role model. Is this a male polished to perfection and revered by his community and beyond? Do we consider a positive male role model as one without blame or flaw? How do we aptly capture and present these defining standards of a positive male role model? For me, a positive male role model is a man by whose life another individual can pattern his or her own life. I'm not saying that boys or girls have to become miniature versions or carbon copies of others who we look at as being the role models. But I think that when we describe a man as a role model, he must possess those qualities, those traits, those behaviors, those characteristics that represent who this man really is. Again, Minister Hamilton referred to a couple of the characteristics in his remarks. I look back this time at my godfather, who is now deceased. He was a mountain man. You know what we call a mountain man? Younger people don't know? Okay. Went to the mountain almost every day of his life. That was his job. On Saturdays, siblings, his children and others would go to the mountains. When I was a boy, we used to say Bambel, but now I think it's Vambel. That portion beyond Brimstone Hill. And so every Saturday from around the age of 10 and 12, I used to go to the mountains with my godfather. He lived in Old Road, Frederick Thompson. The older heads might know that name. And we spent the entire day. We had from sunrise to sunset. We had breakfast there, we had lunch, and we had dinner. And you know, nothing sweeter than mountain food, eh? Food that is cooked in the mountain. For me, he was the hardest working person that I knew. And I look back and I said, the inspiration that I get to work hard, the inspiration that I get to work hard, I think I got it from him. It wasn't generic, it wasn't by blood, but it was the model that I saw. And so today, you know, some people call me the infatigable. Does not get fatigued easily. Hard work. Beyond the biological construct of being a male, of being born as male, historically there have been a number of societal expectations and norms that have contributed to this discussion. There are certain roles that we expect the men to perform, and similarly certain roles that we expect women to perform. And I'm one of those persons who believe that women, yes, can father their children. To some extent, that was my experience. There are some women who take on the role of fatherhood and perform with excellence. But on the other hand, sometimes we say that a woman cannot really replace a male figure in a life of a young man. And we argue sometimes that men can't do the same. And I'm reminded a few years ago, there was a male who won the Mother's Day Award. It was on CNN. That time, you know, television was just coming in. CNN was just coming in, or just being brought to our shows. And this young lady said that when her mother died, her dad was the one who combed her hair, prepared her meals, dressed her, and showed that she got a good education. And she nominated him as Mother of the Year. It was Mother of the Year competition. And he won. And I remember the late Gwyneth Hanley, my geography teacher in high school, a woman, a role model to me. Because in those days, when I went through my turbulent adolescent years and fought in school, get into fights in school, it was Gwen Hanley who counseled me, who took me aside and spoke good things into my spirit. On the other hand, my principal, who I loved dearly, did not spare the rod, didn't spare the rod. And he's now deceased, just recently, the late Dr. Joseph Halliday. And he was, for me, a great role model because he did not give up on me. So I had Miss Hanley, who provided that nurturing love and soft words and everything. On the other hand, his way of ensuring that I made a turnaround was to plaster my posterior with the tamarind rod when I didn't behave appropriately. And I give him all the credit for ensuring that I became something of worth in community. I didn't pay attention to the lashes because I know now that I deserve them. But what stood out for me was the fact that he did not give up on me. He could have said, okay, you know, let Vincent do his own thing. When he gets to age, you put him out of school, and that's it. But no, he made an attempt to correct the wrongs that I was engaging in. And so those are some of the persons that I deem as role models in my own life. According to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 from the American Standard Version of the Bible, it says, "And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Genesis 2:24 says, further supported the positive male role model by this quotation, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." The two foundational scriptural references underscore how God of order initially created the enabling environment to support man. The God of order then preordained the role of a male figure as one of leadership and authority. This prescriptive posture carries with it responsibilities such as provider, nurturer, and a supportive metaphorical rock. And what I understand this is to be saying that the man is to be leader, whether in the home, the church, the community. It's normally expected that men would be leaders. Yes, you're very quiet. You know, I personally always admire women in leadership roles. Dame Eugenia Charles, the late Dame Eugenia Charles, was one of my favorite women, and so was Dame Margaret Thatcher. She's deceased now, I think. Yes. In fact, I was studying in the UK at the time when she was Prime Minister. And men must also be providers for their children, their families. And yes, even though we think that nurturing and the softness and the cuddling is for women, yes, men have to be nurturers as well. One may wonder how do boys learn what it means to be a man? Is the skill genetically coded, or does one's enabling environment determine this? Pivotal to this context is the importance of strong families, and by extension, strong communities. More importantly, there is that urgent need for strong, positive male presence within our family structures. Too many homes have absentee fathers. Too many jobs have absentee males. Teaching, education. we struggle to find at least one male per school. At least one male per school. And so we continue to do our best to attract bright young men into the profession. Those who are already there, we try to hold them, to groom them, and to encourage them to take on leadership. And so I am delighted that the state scholar for 2018 is in fact a teacher at the Basti High School. Yes, that deserves a round of applause. Because usually, you know, we have persons who become state scholars, they don't want to teach, they want to go into the banks and in government headquarters and other places, but I'm happy that we have a state scholar as a teacher. It's going to send a message to the young men, the youngsters in our community. The arguments by theorists will support and refute both ends of the spectrum. As such, within our societal or social context, research shows that mothers are typically nurturing, soft, gentle, comforting, protective, and emotional. Fathers, on the other hand, tend to encourage reasoned risk-taking and to be challenging, prodding, playful, and physical. Children, I believe, need a balance of protection and reasonable risk-taking. According to firstthings.org, the involvement of a father or positive male role model has profound effects on children, particularly on our boys. Father-child interaction undoubtedly promotes a child's physical well-being, perceptual ability, and competency for relating with others. The source added that these children demonstrate greater ability to take initiative and evidence of self-control when we have men being present in the upbringing. If I were to define the term alpha positive male role model, and alpha is a term not only that occurs in the Bible when we talk about the alpha and the omega, but it is a description that fits persons of certain traits. And so I've used the word alpha in front of the theme to say that we need more alpha positive male role models. My description would craft a positive male figure who has not been succumbed to the harsh realities of his life. This alpha positive male role model understands the critical importance of positive choices and committing to such decisions. And I have a couple of characteristics that I would want to share with you. They go for both men and women. But since we are focusing on positive male role models, again, as I said, I would like to introduce the word alpha in front there. I'll probably share about 5 or 6. It says that alpha people, alpha men, are blunt and honest. They speak their mind. They don't hold back. And so this is a quality that some of our youngsters can benefit from, because it concludes by saying that they choose honesty over compassion in what they do, in what they say, and in the displaying their feelings. Alpha men don't care what others think of them. They are strong-willed. They know themselves well. This sometimes could be a little bit contradictory, because we have to be careful of what people think of us. Not that we allow it to deter us or to get under our skins, but we have our reputation to guard. And so when I read this, I didn't take it as was stated. Men who are alpha speak with actions, not words. And so, yes, we might have men who don't speak a whole lot, but you'll get them to do a whole lot of work. That is another quality that our youngsters could emulate in the persons who they look to as role models. They always make their actions count. They are protective. Alpha people, alpha men are overly protective of their belongings, their surroundings, and of the people that they care about. Their passion is often seen as bossiness. So sometimes when we see certain men, people in general, trying to get things done so that persons are able to benefit, some people look at them as being bossy in their attitudes. They are perfectionists. People with alpha personalities are perfectionists. I thought this was only being said of Pisces people, of which I'm one. But now I know that it's not just Pisces alone who are perfectionists, but those persons who are branded as alpha, men and women. And the last one says, they are hard workers. Alpha people, alpha men are often seen as workaholics. And when I read these qualities here, I see myself in them. I believe that the Men's Council invited me to give the address tonight because of the reputation that precedes me. So if I am not in your books a role model, I want to say to the thousands of children who pass through my hands in St. Kitts and the United States, I consider myself a role model to those youngsters who sat at my feet. And as I look across this audience tonight, there are several of them here of whom I'm very proud. I believe that the men of St. Kitts and Nevis have to rise up and do more. We applaud the work of the Men's Council, and I would join with the chairman, the president, to encourage more of our men to become a part of this body, because I believe that we can do more for our youngsters, both boys and girls. Both boys and girls. I believe that men can be equally good role models for young ladies. And as I say that, I remember my adopted daughter. And I was not the one who adopted her, she adopted me. But whenever, I taught her in the 6th grade, and from then, she would tell people, and I don't want to call his name, he's now deceased, but she used to say, X is my father, but Mr. Hodge is my dad. She lives in Anguilla today. She's a teacher working on her PhD in educational leadership for higher education. And when I visit her and she introduced me to folks who don't know me, she said, this is my dad. And they'll be taken back, they say, no, that's not your dad, that's your brother. That's your older brother. But yes, so I believe, I'm convinced that men can be positive role models in the lives of young women. I want to say thanks again to the council for inviting me, and I wish you every success. Please don't hesitate to call on me to assist in whatever way you think I can. And let me close finally by recognizing His Excellency Ambassador Tom Lee, a great friend to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and to thank him again for the support that you give to the government in general, but in particular the Ministry of Education. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.